Okay, so today we are continuing on with the theme of mid-year check-in sort of videos. How's my reading going so far this year? Anyway, this video is going to be the first 6 months of the year. Who are my favorite characters so far? The characters that have latched onto my heart and are there to stay. So I have a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, it doesn't matter. I have a list of characters. So of the first 6 months of the year, who are some of my favorite characters? This is in no particular order. I'm starting with Misaki from Sword of Kaigen. So this is a standalone fantasy novel. There are other books set in the same world, but this book does stand alone, and it is a story that is structured really differently from what I'm used to reading, but that I really appreciated the structuring because it made things both unpredictable and it gave so much opportunity for emotional fallout and exploration to happen. And Misaki in particular is a character that I really fell for because she's a character that when she was young, she learned, she trained in swordplay and in fighting, but then she agrees to an arranged marriage, which puts her in a position where she has to put that part of herself away, even though it's a part that's really valuable to her. And she's doing everything that she can to honor her family, to honor her culture, to honor traditions. And I really loved seeing the different parts of her. I loved seeing her loyalty and dedication to doing what she feels is right, even if it's not convenient, even if it's not comfortable, even if it's not what she wants. But I also loved seeing her as an absolute powerhouse and seeing her in the different stages of the story, because her taking on this role of wife is not the end of what she does. That's just kind of the beginning portion of this book. And I really loved seeing her as she played many different roles throughout this story, as a student, then as someone trying to honor her culture and traditions, and then someone trying, well, I can't talk to you about her arc, but each different stage that she played, I loved exploring with her and seeing how she would handle it. And I felt like everything she did was so thoughtful and mindful. She wasn't a character that rushed into action without any thought. She wasn't a character that lost her head in the midst of drama or that didn't communicate because no, she was a character that everything she did, she thought out fully. And she was a very sacrificial character, but also such a strong woman, and I loved her for that. I also absolutely adore her best friend in this book. I'm a sucker for friendships, if you didn't know, and not only do I love the friendship in this, but I love how the two lean on each other and pull each other up in their different ways. It was really great to read. Next character on my list is Alice from Still Alice. Alice is a character that felt really real to me. Oh, actually, let me quickly just tell you. So this is a literary fiction about a woman who gets diagnosed with early onset dementia, and it's her kind of reckoning with that, dealing with that, and as well as her progression with the disease. So this Alice is a character that felt completely real to me, and that I felt like I was reading a nonfiction, a biography. In fact, when I first started reading it, that's what I thought I was reading. And when I realized it was fiction, I was a little bit disappointed because I thought I genuinely believed I was reading someone's true journey, which is a really good feeling to have as a reader, to believe characters this much. But also, as I went through this journey with Alice, as I went through this diagnosis, the emotions, and then the progression of the disease with her, not only did I feel like I went through something with someone real, but I also, dementia runs in my family, and it's something that I've been around my whole life. And I really felt like going through this story with Alice helped me to understand elements of my family and family members on a much deeper, more intimate, and more personal level. And I will always appreciate Alice for that. Next I have Ove. Let's just keep up the emotions. Ove, from A Man Called Ove by Frederick Bachman. This is another literary fiction novel. So Ove is your standard, stereotypical, grouchy, cranky old man, which is a character type that I instantly love and I'm very endeared to. So he was easy for me to be interested in and be excited to follow. But we slowly start to unveil what has led him to this grumpy disposition. And we get a lot of, we just get a lot deeper into his heart and his soul and his devotion and dedication and deep, desperate love for his wife. And one thing that Bachman unfailingly always writes in a way that gets straight to my heart is his love for his wife. In his nonfiction, Things My Son Needs to Know About the World, the way he would write about his wife was something that I can just tell that Bachman is such a romantic and that he loves his wife so deeply. And with Ove, I read this after the nonfiction, I really felt like Ove's love for his wife was a direct reflection of how Bachman writes about his own wife in real life. So anyway, I just think that he can write a couple loving each other, two people loving each other, so raw and honest and deeply that it means a lot to me. But then Ove himself, again, is a character that I feel that I know. He's a character that I feel like was an actual part of my life. I've said this many times. I feel like he's my neighbor. I feel like if I step outside my house, I should see him there grumbling and grunting over his flower bed or over the cat that he doesn't want around. And again, for a character to feel so a part of my life after finishing a story, that alone will win me over. But also knowing the heart and soul of who this man is and what he's been through and what he's going through, as well as seeing his development and seeing what he got out of the story. Just, it's a lot, man. It's a lot for me to be able to talk about spoiler free. I can't, but I can say that Ove is my favorite character I've ever read. Alanna! So Alanna, The Last Adventure is a book that really surprised me. It's a middle grade, and I don't typically like middle grade books, but Alanna is a story about a girl who has a twin brother, and essentially she wants to be a knight, and he wants to be a sorcerer, but knighthood is for boys, and magic is primarily for girls, if I'm remembering that setup pretty well. So they decide to switch places and take on each other's identity, which instantly, yes. But Alanna is a character that I really, really, really loved. I felt like I could relate to her a lot. And her fight, her drive, her respect for her life and for her friends and for her family and what she went through and sacrificed to get to where she is, as well as how she was able to lean on her friends around her, all just culminated into a story that I loved reading. I said I was going to continue on with the series right away, and I didn't because I'm an unreliable mess, but I will continue on with the series for sure because Alanna is a character and this story is a story that I easily want to go back to very soon. So for A Silent Voice, I want to talk about both Shoya and Shoko. Shoya is our main character and he was a bully. We start off in the beginning where he's in middle school and he is a bully and he's picking on this girl, Shoko, who is deaf, and it's terrible. But then we fast forward, we get to them in high school, and a lot of things have changed in Shoya and in how he views the world and how he views himself. And he's trying much. He's trying. It's hard to spoil this one because after the first volume, you get such a distinct shift in the direction that the story goes toward. So anyway, all I'll say is Shoya and Shoko are both characters that I thought were so well written and that I loved so dearly. I would say that Shoko is easily one of my favorite characters to read that I have read. And she's one of those characters that I wish I knew her in real life so that I could be her friend and so that I could just hold my arms out and not let anyone harm her, because she's so sweet and so gentle and kind, and all of the internal stuff that she goes through because of Shoya is she's one of those characters that I just want to protect at all costs, and I love her so much. So she's easily on this list. I do want to also mention Shoya, because Shoya has one of my favorite arcs that I've read, character arcs. I mean, Shoko is the character that belongs on this list because she just deserves all the good things in the world. Next, I struggled on who I should talk about in this book because in Gardens of the Moon there are several characters that I really latched onto, which, by the way, those of you who are still waiting on my review for Dead House Gates, it's coming. I'm reading it very slowly, but the review is coming. I'm getting close. But anyway, Gardens of the Moon. So I don't know. I think I settled on Tattersail as my favorite character in this book. I believe that's where I am, but I considered Hairlock too, because I really love being scared by that man. But I think I'm going to go with Tattersail. I think Tattersail is my favorite in this book. She is a character that, from her very introduction, she was fascinating to me. I guess I can tell you the beginnings of the book, or at least the beginnings of her character. She's a character that has this thing called the Deck of Dragons, and she will read the cards and be able to see into the future. But then also, man, how much can I say? Because this book is so abstract in some ways. Like, it's so, things are unveiled in layers. And so I'm trying to think how much is allowed. There's a lot to this Deck of Dragons, and all of her predictions and her fortunes and her prophecies are really interesting to read, but then all the mystery around what she's doing as it gets unveiled is so cool. But then also she has a personality that I really, really enjoyed reading. And spoiler free moving forward, she's a character that there's a lot that I would like to understand that I don't understand yet. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what in the world is happening with her. So I think she's the character that stands out to me the most in this book. I would say pretty much every character in the Heroes is someone that I loved reading about. This is a pretty decent cast of characters, and Abercrombie's character work is absolutely outstanding. So there's so many characters that I really enjoyed reading in this book, and every single character that Abercrombie writes feels authentic and real, and not like an archetype, not like someone who's being pushed along by the plot, not someone that's hollow or shallow, but someone that I really feel like could be a real person, which is terrifying because of the type of people that he writes. But there's one character in this book in particular that I think stands above the rest, simply because of, so Abercrombie's humor is also excellent in every book that he writes, but this particular type of humor just really got me. So there's this one character that in his mind, when he's thinking, particularly when he's thinking about a certain lady, he is very extravagant and poetic, and his heart is on his sleeve. And then he opens his mouth and he doesn't say any of those things. He never actually expresses his honest thoughts. And so the contrast of being in his mind and hearing him, or seeing him, hearing him in his mind go through this indulgent, poetic view of the world and of the people around him, and then the contrast of what comes out of his mouth was both hilarious and fascinating, and also so relatable, because that is the way so many people work, you know, with not being able to connect the mind and the mouth, or not being willing to. And I loved the way Abercrombie wrote this, so I think he's my favorite character of this book. Next, I'm gonna say Steris, and Steris is a character that should not make this list, but she's here for the sake of she should be here. So I have read what have I read? Alloy of Law and Shadows of Self. And Steris is a character that I think is so cool, but she doesn't get nearly the page time she deserves. She's a character that already, with what little bit I've seen of her, is already a character that I've never read before, and I like reading characters that I've never read before. And she's very logical and analytical. She studies people, she studies society, and she knows what's appropriate to do and what's not. And she can kind of manipulate people and conversations around where she wants them to go and how she wants to be perceived. Everything is so analytical, but at the same time, she's also, Man, this is hard because you get so little of her in book one. What am I allowed to say? She'll rehearse conversations based off of how she knows people want conversations to go or what they like out of conversations. But then beneath all that, all those thoughts and all that structuring and maneuvering, there's so much underneath that I've just barely begun to see. And the way I'm describing her now, she almost sounds like cruel or manipulative or mean, but she's not. She's such a genuine person who just does all that because social interactions aren't easy for her. Fitting into the mold isn't easy for her. And so she has to plan it all out and she has to think it all out with her mind because socializing, being a part of society isn't natural for her. And she's such a genuine and honest character that just has to do life a little differently to make it work for her. And I like her so much and I need more of her. And book 3, I really, really want more of her. And the final character on this list is predictably Monkey D. Luffy. So One Piece is a series that has crept into my life a little bit more aggressively than I thought. And one of the main reasons for that is because of the character work in this series. I have a couple of characters that I could go on about in this section, but I'm keeping it to Luffy alone, who is our protagonist and who I've already made a video about why I love him so much. So just keeping it brief right here since he already has a dedicated video, but Luffy has been such a fun character to follow and such a fascinating character to try to understand. He has this doe-eyed, sweet, childlike outlook on life. This, I'm gonna follow my dream and I want you to follow your dreams too, even if your dream is the complete opposite of mine. But he also has this bullheaded bulldozer way of, I'm gonna get what I want. And so if something is standing in the way of his dreams or one of his friends' dreams, he's gonna get through that barrier no matter what. And if he ends up meeting someone along the way and he connects with their dream, believes in their dream, he'll go ahead and put everything on pause to make sure that what they need is accomplished as well. In general, freedom seems to be at the core of who he is, wanting to make sure that everybody has the ability to follow their dreams and to do what they deserve. If someone is being held from their freedom, then he takes that as a personal affront and he'll do what he can to make sure that that ends. He also has this very trusting and kind and again childlike outlook on pretty much everybody he faces. The most random characters, if he finds them interesting even in the slightest, he'll invite them to join his crew. He doesn't need to know them. He doesn't need to know what they're about. He just needs to be interested in them, or they need to have some sort of skill set that he would find helpful to the crew at large. But at the same time, he also has this incredible dedication and loyalty to his people. One thing that I've noticed about him is when his crew is in physical danger, his mentality tends to be to smile and say, this is gonna be fun, let's fight. But when his crew is in emotional pain, that seems to be the thing that shifts him the most into full-on attack mode. He's a force to be reckoned with. He has weaknesses such as his gullibility and easily tricked, but he also has so many strengths. And while he has physical strengths, I think that easily his strongest strength is his dedication and loyalty to his crew and his desire to not only fulfill his own dreams, but to fulfill theirs as well. And I love him for that. Okay, so there's a list of some of my favorite characters so far in the first 6 months of this year. I know it's a long list. I'm sorry. I am a character reader. If you didn't know it, I know I say it a lot. I'm sorry. But I'm a character reader. When a story has characters that I can latch onto and that I believe, I will run with the story. But even it could be the most brilliantly constructed plot. If the characters are hollow or shallow or I can't connect with them, which I don't need. I mean, there's great heroes in this list and there's bad people in this list. I don't need to connect with their motivations. I just need them to feel authentic and deep and layered and real, and then I'll run with the plot even if the plot isn't that great. It's about the characters for me, man. It's about the characters for me. And when I find characters I love, I could talk about them for a while. So there you go. That's my list of my favorite characters so far this year. I would love to continue chatting with you about it in the comments. Are there any characters on this list that you've also loved or that you feel differently about than me? And who's your favorite character of the year so far? What book do they come from and why? I would love to read so that I can just add more excellent characters to my list of reading. Anyway, check out my Patreon if you feel like it. We chat there all the time, do bunches of buddy reads. I post videos every Tuesday through Friday. I'll see you again soon.